University of Ottawa, where I'm working on fabricating and characterizing silicalite membranes. And today I'm going to talk to you about characterizing zeolite membranes. So chemical manufacturing facilities, such as the one shown on the right here, have enabled us to produce a wide variety of products. However, in producing these fuels and these fertilizers and these plastics, we have also produced greenhouse gases, which have a negative impact on our environment. And this impact has become so significant that it can now be observable from space, as shown by the decline of sea ice in the Arctic over on the left-hand side of the slide here. So today I'm going to talk to you about zeolite membranes, which have the potential to directly capture greenhouse gases before they're emitted, and also indirectly as an alternative low energy intensity process for separating gaseous mixtures. So as a membrane process, our zeolite membranes are a selected layer through which molecules are transported. But because they're zeolite membranes, our membrane layer is actually composed of zeolite crystals. And our zeolite crystals themselves contain lots of uniform channels through which gases are transported. And then depending on the zeolite that you've chosen, you can preferentially transport different molecules. So this means that we can make membranes that are suitable for a whole range of processes by making membranes with different zeolites. And so when we expose a zeolitic membrane to a gas mixture, we see that we're able to create two streams which have different compositions to our initial mixture. So we have a selected product stream as well as a retained product stream. So one of the ways which we can fabricate zeolite membranes is by taking a porous support, whose cross-section looks a lot like the image shown here, and by synthesizing crystals of zeolite inside those free spaces. And so ideally, we'll be able to have lots of zeolite crystals plugging the entire support, so that when molecules start on one side of the membrane, they can be transported through those channels from one side of the membrane to the other. However, we don't quite live in a perfect world, and quite often some defects are present. And so these defects are transported through the membrane by the spaces which surround our zeolite crystals, as well as those regions which aren't occupied by zeolite crystals. And so because we're now, with this understanding about zeolite membranes, we see that there's two different transport pathways. And so thereby, conducting a few tests using a small number of gases, we're able to describe these defects. And then in describing those defect pathways as well as the zeolite crystal pathways, we can better design our membranes, and we can also evaluate them. So a good way of showing how we can differentiate between these different membranes is shown here on the slide. So for membranes which contain large defects, they'll look similar to that on the left-hand side of the slide, where we see lots of large channels. And this looks less like a membrane and more like a pipe which has a bunch of holes drilled into its sides. And that's pretty much how it would perform. However, when we start to plug those defect spaces with our zeolite crystals, we get a membrane which can be more better described as shown on the right-hand side, where we have smaller defect channels and more zeolite channels. So not only are we now able to show that there are these two different channels which are present, but this type of representation is independent of the zeolite type. So we have a method of characterizing zeolite membranes that's truly versatile. And then additionally, we can use it to predict how our membranes will perform with gases we haven't tested yet. We can also predict how the membrane will perform when we have longer membranes, as our composition changes along the length of the membrane. So to give you an idea of the potential for zeolite membranes, I have here a picture of a carbon capture plant shown on the right. And in this technology, I'd like to draw your attention to three of the units. So in the green box, we have the amine solvent tanks. So this process requires a large amount of solvent, which is caustic and nasty. And then we also have in the blue box the carbon capture unit. This is an absorber. And then we also need to release the captured carbon in the stripping column shown in the red box. So these are a lot of units, and they're also very energy intensive. Whereas if we were to take zeolite membranes, such as we make in the lab, and then by characterizing them, we know what we have, and we can create larger membranes and break them up into stainless steel housings, we can actually replace all of these large units with a series of membranes that would fit in a space that's approximately the size of that building at the bottom of that picture. So in summary, I'd like to say that our zeolite, by utilizing our knowledge of zeolite membranes, we can predict the performance of zeolite membrane processes and design these processes. And then in doing so, we can realize these benefits of low energy intensity separation processes and also reduce our impact on the environment. Thank you.
Like the visual format, if you